As new cases of the coronavirus are popping up every day and more group gatherings are canceled, the pandemic has begun to take its toll on all of our mental health, regardless of whether we've been physically impacted. And even though the president might prefer that we all just forgot about it, it's not even happening. Those of us with friends and family who are vulnerable to the disease know that that is not possible. Here to talk about how a pandemic like the coronavirus impacts our collective psychology is Harriet Fraad. Harriet Fraad is a mental health counselor and hypnotherapist in practice in New York City. She is a founding member of the Second-Wave Feminist Movement. Harriet specializes in speaking and writing about topics in which psychology and economics overlap. Harriet, thank you so much for joining us on the program. Again, I really appreciate it.
I'm glad to be here.
Well, everyone's losing their minds, and rightfully so. What are your thoughts about what's happening?
Well, my thoughts are that people are upset because they're getting a hint that they're utterly unprotected. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that we were members before Trump was president of the Pandemic Commission of the UN, in which the UN countries pledged to keep each other informed about pandemics that might happen and how to protect against them. He withdrew from that commission and withdrew the money. So we're not clued in. Also, between 28 and 30 million Americans have no insurance. Then about another 60 million have such high deductibles that they join the uninsured that they'll never go to the doctor if they feel like they're sick. If they're sneezing or coughing or have flu-like symptoms, they're going to save the money so that they're going to spread it around. Because if over half the country, 60%, doesn't have $400 in case of the worst emergency, they're not going to be running to doctors if they have to pay out of pocket. And also, it's only March. The deductibles start accumulating in January.
Yes, and Harriet, not only that, but people are running out and hoarding hand sanitizer. If you don't have $400 to get a little bit of extra supplies in your home, as they're recommending, how are you gonna?
You're not going to protect yourself. Also, we have to look at the way our country works as a capitalist country, and with one of the most outrageously market-driven healthcare systems in the world. We are the only healthcare system that allows direct-to-consumer advertising, the only one in the developed world, and that's over 30 countries, that we're not going to do anything that doesn't make money for the top. Therefore, when the test kits came out, the best test kits came from Germany. People recommended that the US government buy a massive number of these test kits. Well, the US government said, no, we want an American company, and the states and hospitals have to deal, each making their own deal. This company, if you're making a deal for everyone, for the federal government, you can work out something. If you're an individual hospital or even an individual state, you have much less bargaining power. Plus, the best test kits, which everyone was buying, came from Germany, and the United States waited till we had a company that was obviously connected to Trump, who developed our own test kit, so they could make a profit by selling to individual groups rather than the federal government.
And we've also had deaths. This is a matter of life. We've already had deaths in our country. So
yes,
capitalism kills, as we say.
Yes, it does. And another way that it really kills is that things that are preventative, like surgical masks, well, they're out of them at all the local drugstores because you don't keep inventory that doesn't sell. So you don't accumulate an inventory unless the federal government pays you to, and this government will not. So that if there's a pandemic, you're not prepared. You don't have the hand sanitizers. You don't have the masks because you have to make a profit. And it doesn't pay to stockpile those things if they don't sell immediately.
Mhm.
And when the pandemic comes, you can raise the price so that Americans are unprotected and they know it.
There's been
And
there's been discussion about when people feel.
worried.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I
Oh,
was just
there's
going to say that people are worried,
people are
even if they
definitely
haven't
worried.
done this. They don't have to know the whole analysis to know that they're terribly worried because we're way behind in the test kits. We're way behind in the supplies. The rest of the world that has government guaranteed healthcare is ahead of us. China's already solved this problem because it's a state capitalism where the state controls what goes on, for a lot worse as well as sometimes better.
Huh.
And they've solved it.
New York State has started making hand sanitizers in the prisons.
Yes, because we have a slave labor force there.
Right.
And companies can make a lot of money by employing slave labor.
What, Harriet, what do you think about the fact that it has been said that psychologically, when people are frightened, they will more likely glom on to like a father figure, mother figure, a parent figure, and that leaves us even more open to the furthering the fascism than we're already open to at this point. Looking for like a
I
strong
think that
man.
that's true.
Mhm.
And that's one of the reasons that they have persuaded a lot of people that the Democratic strongman isn't Bernie, who actually would appeal to Trump's voters because he's an angry white man and he's not associated with Obama, who Trump's voters hate, like Biden is. So they say he's the man. So what if he's senile? He's the man.
Mhm.
And the Republicans have their own despot who they can trust no matter what he says,
Mhm.
even if it's obvious lies.
Mhm.
There's an investment people have. They're brought up in authoritarian families where they're not allowed to question. They go to authoritarian churches where they're often also not allowed to question, and authoritarian schools where they're not allowed to question, and then to authoritarian leaders. And in times of crisis, people from those kinds of families go back to their childhood and say, okay, okay, mommy and daddy, I'll do anything. I'll do anything you say. I'm good. I'm good. I shut up and obey. And
Mhm.
that's very dangerous. The
Mhm.
people who developed that theory were studying the rise of fascism in Germany and Italy,
Mhm.
where the inflation was out of control. People took wheelbarrows to the supermarket full of money to pay for simple things, and they felt their whole life savings going, and they looked to a strong man, Hitler
Now
and
I was wondering
Mussolini.
about that too, about the potential inflation. Inflation, the markets are crashing all around us. Hopefully, Professor Wolf can also come on and talk to us another day. Um, Everyone has missed both of you. You have been strongly and highly requested by our audience. The two of you. I understand one of the speeches have been canceled, or at least brought to online.
Brought to online because people are afraid. And they're not afraid for nothing. And one of the things that we have to understand is people have a sense, even if they may not know specifically about the bizarre bureaucracy that has kept us as the last prepared here, they have a sense they are unprotected because they are unprotected. They're physically unprotected. What they can do is wash their hands, gargle with salt, wash their hands for 20 seconds after they've been in a place where they've touched public things, avoid crowded public areas like the train at rush hour,
How are
and
you going to do that as a working person? I just had this
you're
question.
not.
My husband, we are lucky enough to have a car. He started driving to work as they told people to start avoiding the train. It has been gridlock on the streets. So you can't actually do anything in New York except take the train. I don't
That
understand how that is a reasonable thing to ask New Yorkers to do. Avoid
it
the
is
train.
not going to put in the money to be sure to sanitize the trains regularly as you ride. They're
Ugh,
not going to. It's about the money. Whether you're going to invest in public health or you have a market-driven healthcare system that wants to just sell and get opportunities to sell. And that's where we are. And so people are frightened and they feel sold out because they are. And and very that's huge. Also, all these parents are threatened that the schools will close. It's not like the city will provide individual childcare or safe childcare centers.
no.
No, no one will. And all these people who have no sick days will never report it. So you have all the uninsured, all the big deductibles, all the people who don't get paid sick days, all the people who, if they have coronavirus, they'll be fired. Everybody within this terrible system works together to keep us unprotected. And so all we have is our own little personal protection system. And that isn't enough. You need a coordinated effort. And there, China has built 10 hospitals since the outbreak of the coronavirus. One of the reasons that they're containing it and they're not getting new cases is they put an all out concerted government effort. People have been taught, even though the New Deal was the best government we had in most people's memory, and even if not their memory, their knowledge of history, that was big government. But Republicans have frightened people that the government is the enemy, not the big companies using the government to make a profit. And
Well,
so we don't have that. We don't have government protection.
so our audience wants to know, what advice do you have in regard to handling the intense fear, panic, and hopelessness that people are currently dealing with due to climate change, coronavirus, the economic collapse, likely that Sanders will not get in, I'm adding that one, and Trump possibly having another 4 years? What do we do internally so that we can manage uh, watching Rome burn, as they say?
Well, one of the things that I think people can do is understand that things are not hopeless. That in Michigan, although Bernie lost, 40 million people voted for a socialist. People are beginning to see we can't do this alone or with private business alone. We need some kind of New Deal type, because that's what Bernie's suggesting, intervention of a socialist nature. And that's a big plus. Plus, people do need to get together with other people. They need to get together with people online and in person. They need, when they've been out in a public place, to go home, spend 20 seconds with soap and water. That's all you need to wash their hands. And talk about what can we learn from this disaster? What can we learn together? Because the lessons are that a market-driven healthcare system helps few people get rich, and the rest of us not get healthy.
Mhm.
And that's why Cuba now has a higher age at which people die than Americans.
Mm.
And they have lower infant mortality, that poor little island, because they have a non-market driven healthcare system that operates to mainly keep people healthy and connected. So when they have terrible things like flooding, their rickety old buses take people to the hills and they have no deaths.
Mm.
Whereas we had plenty of deaths in New Orleans and other places. That you have to get together with people, wash your hands after, but get together with
Wash
people.
your hands after, right?
And
I think wearing a mask is not a terrible idea at this point.
not a terrible idea if you can get one, although the usual mask you can get keeps you from infecting others. It doesn't really keep others from infecting you. It's not
What if we just
effective.
wear it inside out? I'm sorry, I don't mean to be making light, but that is my coping mechanism.
Well,
When I was running away from the 9/11 towers, everything seemed absurd to me, and I just kept blurting out jokes. So I don't know if that was a welcome thing or not for the people I was with, but
well,
oh,
it it is, and what we have to do is say, what can we learn from this disaster so it's not a wasted disaster?
That's a
And
great point.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, we have some questions coming in. I don't want to ask questions about, influenza strains, et cetera, because Harriet is not in that business. And the reason we're having her on is to talk about the effect on society and people's personal psychology. So if you have other questions, please put them in. I know I still have a whole bunch of questions. What effect do you think, this might be just conjecture, but I'm curious about the effect that we're seeing that President Trump has no plan. We're seeing that, I mean, the Democrats are seeing it. I'm not sure if Republicans and Trump fans are seeing it, because Fox News is putting out propaganda basically saying this is all a hoax, even though every bit of information is telling even the Fox viewers that it's not a hoax, including that the CPAC people are, Ted Cruz, the other people are being infected. They're being quarantined. Do you think that this might actually have, what's it going to take to have a breakthrough effect for the people on the right to realize that their strong man that they are looking to for help and guidance has clay feet? Do you think this is happening? Because I've been looking forward to that.
no, I don't think so, because I think
Oh,
part of the authoritarian personality that makes people attracted to that, and part of Trump's idea is by so criticizing and putting down everyone who criticizes him, he gets people afraid. That was Roy Cohn's modus operandi, and Roy Cohn was Trump's teacher. And so I think that some of them may see through it and others will cling harder. It's like people clinging harder to the Catholic Church once the priest abuse came out.
yeah.
Well,
Well,
there's different things, like in Ireland, where the 40,000 orphans who were abused in the church's orphanage in Ireland, churches' orphanages, 40,000 testified. The ones who committed suicide obviously didn't testify. But because of that, education and orphanages are no longer run by the church.
mm,
However, the whole idea that if you have a hierarchy that's unaccountable, which we have now because Trump sees that nobody can check his unbalanced things,
mm.
that you need checks and balances on anybody. And some people, just as in Ireland, many people said, okay, it's enough. The church can't run our public schools. The church can no longer run our orphanages. And now, and they elected a homosexual Pakistani origin person, and they passed an abortion law, and they rebelled. Sometimes people rebel. After World War II, the Italians who subscribed to the Italian family was the same as the Catholic family. Many children, the male in authority. Once Mussolini fell and Italy suffered terribly, they voted for divorce, they voted for abortion rights. That people did see, no, this authoritarian system has been terrible for us. There's a chance that people will do that, because right now Trump has just finished denying that coronavirus is any issue at all, and is now saying he's going to solve it, which of course he's not, because a market-driven healthcare system can't solve it. What he's doing is doing bribery. He's taking off the pay, reducing the payroll tax so people get money in time for his election. But at some point, the authority falls out of its own dysfunction. And this may be the point at which Trump becomes dysfunctional, although,
More so than he already has been.
right,
Oh.
people accept that he's dysfunctional. There was a whole group that felt we're making money, that's all that counts. The people whose investments
I wonder if as they stop making money, I mean, the stock market is crashing. due to this, if they'll start, sometimes I think that it only is when corporations start seeing their bottom line affected is that when progressive change actually happens. It's part of how progressivism happens, is that the bottom line, corporations see that their bottom line is going to be affected, whether it's, in the past, it's been boycotts, it's been the people with the pitchforks, it's been any number of things. And as they're seeing that their bottom line is being affected, what with the airlines, the cruise ship industry, now pretty much everything, sports, anywhere you have to gather, the education industry, do you think they're going to start, not having President Trump's back as much as they did when they were just making money
They
hand over fist?
they might. They still got a tax cut that gave a wild amount to the rich, and they're very happy about that. And so that they got a huge tax cut at the top. However, the stock market is volatile. It gyrates up and down because there is no stability. Trump has been trying to forestall the inevitable deep recession until after he gets elected,
The
but
second
he
time,
may
right?
not be able to. And then people might desert him, and they might vote for somebody who's enough of the same old capitalist thing like Biden that they trusted. What and the mass of people may turn more towards a guy like Bernie, who says we can tax these wild profits and have Medicare for everyone and childcare for everyone. Because of course we can. We're a rich country, but with the division between the rich and poor gets bigger every day.
Harriet, another question from our stream chatters. And again, stream chat, if you have a question, just put it right there in the chat and I will ask it. This is from Lauren. Lauren asks, will the coronavirus drive a renegotiation of the U.S. social contract?
I don't think it alone can. I think you need a social movement to change the social contract. What the Chilean women are doing to change the contract in which men get a right to kill women and abuse them sexually is they had 1 million women in the street in a demonstration, so that they had to be taken seriously.
Well, we can't do that because we'll all get the coronavirus. We can't go 1 million people in the street. Oh.
But do other creative things. And I think people, they have to be, in order, change comes when people have had enough and they want to change. And although I think Trump is a disaster for America, I think a lot of people voted for him because business as usual left them poor and dispossessed and without adequate health care, without huge deductibles, and left their children with fewer chances than they had. And so they wanted a change. They tried to vote for Obama, who was basically the same politics colored in brown. It was a change, it was brown. That didn't work out for their lives. And Trump is a destroyer. He wants to wreck it all. And he captured people's anger at being deprived and their racist anger of being deprived of white supremacy and their male anger at being deprived of as much male supremacy as they had had before. And so I think people will start either obeying and hunkering down, or maybe Bernie will start the Our Revolution Party and people will actually have a choice.
Oh, that would
And,
be wonderful.
but there's no guarantee. Anyone who says they know is just lying. Nobody knows.
Harriet, I know you have clients that you work with, and obviously you can't, you don't want to speak in specifics, but have you seen the aggravation of other symptomology, given the fact that we're all being boiled as frogs in the, with what's happening in society? Have you seen that in your practice?
Well, people who were afraid are more afraid. People who felt vulnerable and scared have another reason that's quite reasonable to be vulnerable and scared. And people who are afraid to go out because they were afraid for various reasons. Some were abused as children. I'm thinking of one in particular. And he had so much rage, he was afraid if somebody bumped into him, he would kill them. So he only went out at night and to deserted places. But
Well, he'll
people
have free reign now because everywhere will be deserted. So there's a slight upside for him. Not to make light, but it is interesting to hear.
what happens is that this interacts with whoever you are and whatever you're dealing with. My hope is that it will interact with people who say, this is enough. If ever there was a proof that a market driven healthcare system is a capitalist extravaganza for the people making money and a disaster for people who need healthcare,
Mhm.
we'll go for the Medicare for all choice and try very hard and make it happen, because when Americans get together they can make things happen. That's what made the New Deal happen. It didn't happen because Roosevelt was just a nice guy. He got in on a balanced budget platform.
Mhm.
And the best example is what happened in Iowa, which you don't think of as a radical place. But the reason that FDR passed the Farm Recovery Act is that people were killing judges who foreclosed family farms. There were pitched battles in the street.
There you go. Yes.
The Iowa militias went to auctions where farmers' land and materials were being auctioned and terrorized everybody into never putting out more than $1 for anything. And there were pitched battles against the feds
Mhm.
in the streets.
Mhm.
And so they had to do something. When people have enough and they start acting, you have to do something.
One of the comments, we have a couple of comments coming in here. At some point, the bourgeoisie, this is from Doot Snaps, at some point, the bourgeoisie will decide that giving people healthcare is necessary to continue their control and profits, but I doubt it would be permanent. Your thoughts
Well,
about that?
it's permanent if people keep defending it. One thing that I learned going to France quite a bit, my husband's family is from France, so we go there, but is that whenever they threaten to take away anything, hundreds of thousands are in the street. They get free daycare starting at 2 years old, free quality daycare. A master's degree level teacher and an associate's degree level teacher in every room, and a sick room for kids who don't feel well, but their parents have to work or whatever.
Wow, are you
Even if they,
kidding? They don't let sick kids. Oh my goodness, that would be fabulous.
yeah, with a registered nurse in charge,
Mm.
and they get all their medical care at the preschool. But, they were threatening to take some of that away. There were tens and hundreds of thousands of people in the streets, so they stopped doing it.
Um,
Macron took away the fuel tax because people, the yellow vests were in the street. You have to get out there. You have to do something to make sure you register what's going on. I think the Civil Rights Acts and the Abortion Rights Acts happened because we were in one of our many unpopular wars in Vietnam, although then there was a draft. At the same time, angry people were burning their ghettos in riots, and women were taking to the streets. It was too much. They had to do something. Too many people were mobilized in a way that's scary for investment.
mhm.
Investment needs a stable population. And so they made changes.
Lauren says, personally, my conditions were severe to start with, are way worse now than just a month ago. Every day is taking more and more effort to stay on track and not give in to my paranoia and conspiracies and delusions. Yes, especially when those are not delusions anymore. Sometimes I have some relatives who are doomsday preppers, as they say. And I was like, maybe they're just hoarders. But as it turns out, they revealed to me recently that they have been feeling that there was some crisis coming and that they have been preparing for the last 10 years for whatever the crisis is. And these are not sort of libertarians. These are just people who have some certain, anxiety and some mental health issues. And I'm thinking, wow, these people really got to hit the nail on the head. They in other societies, people would say, schizophrenia were considered the shamans of the society. And I don't know. I don't know what point I'm making. I just thought it was slightly, kind of interesting that sometimes the paranoia isn't paranoia, but now it's kind of hard to draw the line between what is paranoid behavior. Should we all be hoarding hand sanitizers and supplies, and what is, just a good idea given what's out there?
What's sad is that doomsday foreseers assume that a personal solution will help them with a social problem. It won't. You'll have your canned goods, you'll be restricted to your shelter. That's not a life. And that doesn't, we're in this life together. And I think in America, we learn, and we learn quite falsely, that if there's a problem, you can solve it yourself. We learned that because for 150 years, between
That's what they've
I
been telling us.
20 and 1950, each generation, if they were white and led by a male in a family, could do better than the previous one. That stopped in the 1970s. But the mentality, you can do it if you really try. No, you have to join with others because it's the whole social fabric has to be changed. And I contrast that with France, where every step of your life, you're in a group that you need. Even when you retire, you join the retirees of whatever neighborhood you're in so that you can fight to be sure you get your benefits and for things you all believe in, and you meet regularly and you engage regularly. 1 in 4 Americans has no one to talk to, even in the worst emergency.
Mm.
And that makes them much sicker mentally and physically.
Mhm.
There was a really interesting experiment that, of course, wasn't then, it was very successful and never repeated, which is that a woman got funding to take over a single room occupancy hotel, to change it and make it beautiful and fill it with old people who are on Medicare and have small apartments and a great big shared space with films and TVs and games and activities. And they found that the Medicare bills plummeted. They didn't get so sick
Mhm.
because they weren't alone, because the mind body is one system. And what you're worried about affects your whole body. There's brain fluid throughout the whole body. That idea of the body and the soul, the necktie symbolizes it. Women don't have that. They're all body, so they have a deep neckline. But men have this head, which is not part of a body.
Mm.
But we are mind bodies. And so these crises affect our bodies and our minds. And the way to change them is to think, okay, how can we prevent this in the future? How can we curtail this now? And how can we stop those forces that are holding us back and join together, even if we're not breathing in each other's coronavirus?
I just wonder if this is all very good, and sometimes you think about what needs to happen in order to. You think about. I was talking in terms of like how alcoholics say they have a bottom, and it would be. It's unfortunate that our bottom here in America is so low. Like we have to have a pandemic unchecked in order to realize that our rugged individualism is not a great idea. But I've been waiting for things to occur in the world that would, and I hadn't thought about this, that would actually try to get people to understand on a mass level what you were just saying, that we need each other, that rugged individualism is not, to whatever degree, is not actually a life. It's being able to participate in your community that is a life. And it's just unfortunately, it's unfortunate that we have to go to coronavirus levels to potentially get that message out.
That's right, potentially, because you can either get the message, we need each other, let's change the conditions that allowed this to run rampant, where the Chinese, who are poorer than we, could control it, and where they're controlling it in various other places that have public health systems and insurance for everyone. Well, people can decide either we need each other, let's get out there, or we must trust the absolute leader. They could go either way. And it's up to those people who know that we need each other here to
Mhm.
make that happen,
Mhm.
like you on your program,
Thank you. Our
that
chat was just saying, I hope we're doing this right here. We're making a community in which that we are, which is one of the reasons I really like Twitch as a platform, because it's not just, we do put this show out on other platforms, but Twitch is very special because we know each other in here. And we respect each other, and we kick out people who are being disrespectful. I have a zero tolerance policy in that area.
good.
So
Yeah, that we need that we're at this point, and I think although Bernie looks like he won't win, due in large part to the
that's
Democratic,
another grief we're all collectively processing at
right,
this moment.
but it also gives us a possibility of having an our revolution party where people realize that the Democratic establishment will not support any kind of change that will give the mass of people a lift, the mass that Hillary Clinton called a basket of deplorables,
Mhm.
that we need something different.
Although I still think Hillary Clinton would have dealt better with the basket of deplorables that, like with this whole situation. I just,
Yes, she might have gone to war with Russia, which is probably why they invested so heavily in getting Trump elected,
Mhm,
but she would have been the same thing. And
mhm.
you can see how she's makes appearances saying Bernie's impossible. He's ridiculous. Nobody would, because look, she and Bill started out with nothing. Now they're multi millionaires. How'd they get there? And they've clawed their way to the top as a corporate merger of the two of them. And she's ignored his sexual predations against women and blamed them while claiming to be a feminist. And they have pleased whoever they needed to please to get very rich. And they don't want an upstart with a different philosophy to muscle in on their game.
Aren't
That's
they
the
getting old? I mean, at some point, don't you just say, I got $1 billion. I am the former president and first lady and secretary of state. No one's going to take their platform. Like, let it go already. Let the people decide what they want.
well,
It's an
the thing is,
insanity.
when you they don't have $1 billion as far as I know, but
Well,
many,
enough.
much more than enough. But when you're that rich, like when even Jeff Bezos, when you have that much money, it isn't about now I can finally afford a new coat. It's about I'm winning because I'm getting more. And when I get more, I'm winning. And I want to win. And so I will cheat my warehouse workers, says Bezos. They will work a mile a minute and get bad backs, but I'm winning. 100 million getting to the moon because I've got 150 billion giving me the lottery every day in winnings because more is better in their universe. And
I don't think it's
everybody
just them. I think that's something that we teach like our children. I agree with you. And I think it's something that living in America just seeps into your skin. And it's really interesting to me that the next generation of people are have rejected that out of hand somehow.
well,
Um,
because they're not going to get it.
yeah, they're not going to get it. And they also, one of the things when I encourage people to go and take part in political activism, be it rallies or groups or whatever, there's always the pushback, especially on WBAI, where you never know if someone's a plant, just to dishearten everyone who's listening, who says, oh, I went to the Women's March and here we are, or I've been marching for however, and here we are. And, one of the reasons to go to these events and to participate in events or groups is because it makes your life better right now. It's not
Right.
just about like later on when some wonderful person gets on the Supreme Court, real wonderful, I'm not being facetious. The work that gets done in that, it makes your life better in this moment.
Because
Uh,
you're connected, you're part of something. We all need to have a spiritual existence, to be part of something bigger than just ourselves. That's what the most successful mental health program in the United States says. That's the 12-step programs. And whatever little town you go to, there's a 12-step program. Usually it's AA. And those have no money. It's really a communist organization, not in their politics, but in their organization. No one can make money out of this. No one is paid. You provide service once you have received. You bring other people in. And it's about connection and a higher power, which is your purpose of connecting with each other and making an affirmation that you're okay, even with all your pitfalls, and we will help each other be strong, which is a beautiful premise. And it is really the most popular social program in the United States. And that's what we can learn. It's a spiritual experience to be part of hundreds of thousands of people singing together. It's wonderful.
And whose main goal is spiritual expansion and healthy living and being, a good person or whatever you want to call it, or
Exactly. Making the world better for everybody, not just grabbing
without
your.
any dogma. They do it with no dogma, zero
That's
dogma, zero authoritarianism, zero. It is a really
yes,
good place to learn about how we could arrange a whole society in that way.
exactly. Exactly. Where you had the economy of co-ops, where each business decided what to make, how to make it, what to do with the money they made, and social organizations worked their way, and everyone had a way of being balanced. In the beginning of the Chinese Revolution, before it became much more corrupted, they had in every place, you had evaluations, not only the top evaluating the bottom, but the bottom got to evaluate the top, which is, of course, it should be. Because
Um,
check and balances are a very American contribution. That's a great one.
Harriet, you recently traveled, and if you're willing to tell us your experience of your travel, while the coronavirus is happening, was it part of your experience there? Not so much the virus, but in interacting with others from in different countries, in the actual travel on the airlines. Was there anything that had been it was unusual now that we're living under Corona?
Well, one thing that was, we were only in California, it wasn't international.
Still.
Someone from Puerto Rico on the way back, but the planes were more empty, although they filled them at the last minute, of course, because they had a waiting list. People could show up and get on. But first of all, California went for Bernie. Everywhere you go, you see Bernie. There was a truck going around the city, a pickup truck that had a screen about the size of a movie screen with just pictures of Bernie. And it said, Bernie, Bernie, and it had all his, there was this presence of hope for change, which was beautiful. There was also an awareness that this is a terrible thing coming down, and an awareness that it's not necessary, that we're unprepared, which is heartening. California, where we were, San Francisco and Berkeley area, are very progressive. And people were aware that it is utterly unnecessary for us to be caught flat footed by a pandemic for which others are prepared. There was real anger about that.
Oh,
People
as we come to the end of our segment, what are your suggestions for people to do to, again, I know you said connect with others. What are your suggestions in addition to that people can do to kind of maintain their equilibrium as we continue to deal with the things coming down the pike?
Well, there's two
I'm just
things.
asking for a friend. No,
There's two things that I can think of. First place, there is a sense of power in knowing what's coming down, in keeping informed about not the particulars, this virus, but even the little information about how in Seattle, a woman doctor was doing a flu study and had all these nasal swabs, thousands of them, that she could then convert into a coronavirus test. but they wouldn't give her permission. They wanted to go through the one company they chose, and guess
Ah,
who making money off of that? But knowing that
do
gives
you
you
know
a.
who's behind that company? Can we start like, getting that out into the waves?
I haven't done that research yet. I will, but I
I'd like
haven't.
to know that because we could get our whole Act TV online viral media empire to do some at least memeing and awareness of who is going to be profiting off of this and shaming. Basically, we need to shame these people. Who is profiting off this? They need to be. Why is this not happening yet? James, James is an expert. He's behind the scenes right now helping run this empire. He is an expert at getting memes out, messages out, and I think that is something that we can all actually get our hands on and do. And I know for me, I absolutely need to be useful in combating whatever the injustice is. Otherwise, I feel, again, powerless. I feel hopeless. I feel, all of those things that can drive a more negative state. So being in action is one of the things I think we can do that. We can do that.
Knowledge and action, two things that we can do. We can know what's coming down, and we can figure out how to make change so it doesn't happen again and it's curtailed now. Look, Me Too operates on shaming quite
And it works
successfully,
great.
although it does.
Yes,
And
that's what I'm saying. What's stupid? Also, shame all the people who are trying to profit from this. I mean, yeah.
including Trump and his
Yes,
government who are
we have a
trying to.
plan. This is good. We came out of this with a plan. This is the best. Harriet, this is wonderful. That's empowering. It's empowering to have a plan.
Is empowering to understand and on that basis make a plan.
Thank you so much, Harriet. When and if we will also do our due diligence in research for who is actually making money off this in the United States. And if you come across information, shoot it our way, and we will get on this, because I do think that this is something that definitely Act TV and its empire would be interested in doing as a public service. People need to know what's going on.
I think that's a great idea, and I will try to understand more about this company.
This is horrible. What company is it? Do you know?
I forgot.
Forgot. That's okay. We can look it up. Thank you so much. Everyone in the chat is sending big purple hearts to you. There's a lot of them here. So thank you so much. And I will see you in 2 weeks if you're still able to come back, that.
But look, this is an online hug, no contagion that I'm sending.
Thank you, Harriet. And it's wonderful to have you back. Please don't ever go on vacation again, which won't be too hard now that we're not allowed to travel. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.